This is Tenhawk's Journeyverse Journeys, Part 5. The drive to the Manor was short and quiet. No one spoke because no one knew what to say. Frank was in the back, flanked by the motionless forms of Xander and Phoebe, constantly checking himself for symptoms while trying to do the same for the two women in the front. Prue was driving fast, probably too fast to be safe considering the shape of Xander's car. Piper was worrying, muttering to herself and throwing constant glances at the back seat. It was her that Frank was worried about the most. He'd seen it before. She was in shock and she wasn't handling very well. Not that he blamed her. It was a rough gig watching a death match like that, especially when your sister and a friend are the ones on the line. Once at the Manor, Frank managed to lift the kid on his own, while the two sisters grabbed the third. The group of them rushed as much as possible into the big house and laid the two people down on the couch. "Ew," Piper moaned as the blood and ichor from Xander's face and clothes wiped off on the couch. "Hush, Piper," Prue grinned before she rushed to the attic. "Oh, hurry up with the book and leave me to worry about getting a mess out of the fabric." Frank looked at the two sisters, an incredulous look on his face. They were acting like they do this every day. "Got it," Prue announced as she walked back in, reading the Book of Shadows as she did. "Belgari demon. Damn. Wish Phoebe's vision was clearer earlier. There's a vanquishing here for it. Let's see, Belgari's sickness typically results in a coma-like state while welts and pustules form along the victim's skin. Gross. Ah, here we go. The antidote requires a sample of the demon's blood." Piper looked at Xander. "I think we've got that covered." Prue grimaced. "Okay, scrape some off him and we'll mix the potion." "Ew." Demon? What in the... Frank watched as the two sisters went about their task, taking a sample of the blood that had spattered across the boy and mixing with herbs and roots from the kitchen. What kind of person keeps essence of toad in their pantry? He had to admit that it seemed to work, though. The potion almost instantly cleared up the visible signs of infection on the two victims, and the shot he had taken, after carefully watching them take theirs, had made him feel a lot better. A low moan served to announce the awakening of the boy laying on the couch, and the three of them rushed to his side. "Oh, man," Xander groaned, as his head rebelled at the attempt to move. "What hit me?" "A Bulgari demon," Piper answered primly, her voice much more relaxed now that she had confidence that her sister and friend would be all right. Who? What now?" Xander shut his eyes, trying to ease the headache. "A Bulgari demon. Nasty type. They collect pathogens and infect humans for fun," Prue answered, still reading from the Book of Shadows. "Well," Xander drawled, "everyone needs a hobby." Another low moan sounded through the room. "Phoebe, are you all right?" Piper's voice had a worried tinge to it. "I was until he made a joke that bad," Phoebe moaned. "Hey!" Frank watched the proceedings with some amusement. Tempered, though, it was by the fact that he really had no clue what they were talking about most of the time. Finally, he'd had enough. "Okay, everyone, hold it." Frank held up his hands. "What the hell just happened?" Xander flashed him a weak smile. "Hey, Mr. NSA. Well, we almost got our asses handed to us by some kind of demonic nerd who collects germs." "Demon." Frank's tone was unbelieving. "Demon," Xander agreed. "I know, hard to swallow. Don't worry too much about it. It's over and you can explain it any way you like." Frank thought about that long and hard. There was no way in hell that anyone back at Never Neverland was going to buy into a story about demons, even if he couldn't explain any other more likely explanation. What the hell am I going to tell him? Finally, he took a deep breath. "Here's what happened. A terrorist brought a bioweapon into the country. I, along with some local help, prevented it from being deployed." Frank rubbed his head. "As far as anything else I may have seen, I didn't." Xander grinned. "I've heard that tune before. But before you go forgetting everything you didn't see, I want to thank you." "Why?" "'Cause you saved my ass when you distracted that thing that wasn't there. Twice. We'd be dead if you hadn't come along." Parker nodded. "You and 3/4 of San Francisco." "Any time, kid." Frank laughed. "Man, I've seen some weird shit. But this one is going down in the record books for sure." Xander laughed along with him, wondering why he was getting such a strange vibe off the NSA agent. Wasn't bad, just felt like the guy was out of place. It watched the event with satisfaction. It hadn't been discovered, and it had secured some very valuable information. It was beginning to hope that it might be able to trust the boy. His willingness to sacrifice himself for his friends was a good sign. The other man, the one called Parker, bothered it, however. He was carrying a powerful aura about him, one that the being had rarely seen. He was a man out of time, and that was something that always brought trouble. The being hoped that it wouldn't have to deal with that man much in the future. Time travel made it nervous. Halliwell Manor, 2 days later. You sure you have to go? Phoebe sounded plaintive. Xander smiled. Yeah, you guys don't really need me around, and I want to get a break from the whole demon hunting gig for a while. Besides, it's not like I won't be back. Heck, I only live a few hours away. We'll probably be calling each other up for help every time an apocalypse rears its head. The sisters grinned. It was a little strained, but it was a grin. Bad joke? Out! Prue pointed at the door, her eyes narrowing. I'm going. Xander laughed, holding up his hands in supplication as he made a run for the door. Phoebe stopped him at the door. Be careful. Aren't I always? Xander grinned. Phoebe hit him. I'm serious, you nut. Xander's smile turned serious, and whispered, So was I. I only take stupid chances when the prize is worth the gamble. Phoebe smiled wide at that, and leaned in and kissed him lightly on the lips. Be seeing you. Xander stared at the door as it closed and whispered, You bet you will. With that, he headed down the driveway and hopped over the driver's side door of his convertible and bade San Francisco goodbye. Terrace Point, Montana, 2 days later. Xander was sleeping in the back of his car. He had tried renting a room the night before, but couldn't get any sleep anyway because of the nightmares. So he figured, why waste the cash? The dreams were starting to get odd, though. They used to be predictable. Terrifying, but predictable. Like flashbacks from old war movies. Except he was actually there, instead of just watching. Now they were different. They had the same feelings, but the subject matter had changed. Instead of Vietnam, Korea, or a Black Ops mission in Colombia or Peru, he was fighting demons and vamps. Xander figured that he should have expected that twist sooner, or later, but it just didn't sit well with him. Sometimes he would see a demon in his dream, and suddenly he'd just know. He'd know its name, its weakness. Hell, he remembered walking up to one of them in his dream and chatting back and forth in its language. The weird part was that he didn't understand a word that either the demon or he was saying. Just this overwhelming feeling that it was a conversation. Sighing, he reached over the seat and turned on the radio, deciding that if he couldn't sleep, then he'd listen to some tunes and hope to drift off eventually. You're listening to KBTP Radio, the sound of the Heartlands. We'll be back in 5 with more songs from the heart, right after this news break. Xander groaned. The last thing he wanted to listen to was the news. His life was depressing enough. Top story tonight is the shocking murders in small town of Terrace Point. 15 deaths have been attributed to this sadistic killer in the past 2 nights. Xander sat bolt upright in his car, his head swiveling until he caught sight of the sign he had parked next to. Welcome to Terrace Point. Population 5,032. Shit. 5,017, you mean? Xander shook himself awake, reaching around for his machete. Police refused to comment, but some eyewitnesses claimed that the murderers were committed by monsters. Witness descriptions have been written off as mass hallucination and public paranoia concerning the dangers of having a murderer in the area. Shit, he thought again. Why am I always in the middle of this crap? Why is he always in the middle of this crap? The being watched as the boy prepared for war. Even as he hoped that the communication was a false alarm, the boy was a born sentinel, unable to walk away from a threat to the whole. The being sighed and marshaled its own energies in case the boy again bit off more than he could chew. The child will soon acquire my capabilities directly. Can I trust him? Xander drove into the small town slowly, his eyes scanning the road as he did. This seemed odd for a demon attack. They usually kept a lower profile. Something this big usually meant one thing. They were preparing for a sacrifice for some major bad, and things were about to hit the fan. He was within sight of the town when the screams started. Screams so loud that he could hear them over the engine and the sound of the tires on the road. Xander hit the brakes, slowing the car to a stop, as he looked for the source of the cries. Jesus, what the hell was that? The screams were coming from a small grove of trees that was a short distance off the road. Xander couldn't make out much more than some frantic movement through the branches, movement that looked altogether too familiar. Next time, I bring more weapons, he thought disgustedly, as he once again strapped the machete to his thigh and carefully fit his remaining stakes into his belt. Lynn Johnson cowered away from her attacker, its grotesque figure no longer the source of her terror, so much as the fact that she had just witnessed it rip the stomach from 3 other people with less regard than a person would give a rabid animal. It was advancing on her, following her as she shrank away, until as she backed against a tree, it grinned at her, a disgusting image, and reached its arm out for her face. Then its smile turned to shock as it stumbled once and fell over, revealing a young man behind it holding a bloody machete and a slightly insane look on his face. The young man looked at her for a short moment, and then said, "Come with me if you want to live." Lynn stared at him in shock for a second, until his face broke into a goofy grin, and he spoke again. "I've always wanted to say that. Come on, girl, we've got to get moving." Xander pulled the young girl to her feet and half-dragged her across the clearing, to where the other people were being gathered together. "Come on, people, let's not let the grass grow here. We've got to get moving." Who are you, man?" one young man asked and looked around in terror. "Name's Xander, but we really don't have time for introductions. Move it!" That last was snapped in a tone of command, and brooked no argument, even from terrified teenagers. They grouped up behind him as he led the group of 8 people back towards the main road. They hadn't gotten more than a few steps when 3 demons stepped forward to block their path. Xander continued towards them, even as the people following him shrank back in fear, showing an outward confidence that he certainly didn't feel inside. "Hey, uglies, what say we call it a night and everyone goes home, okay?" The demons didn't even bother to respond. They just attacked. Xander ducked under the first punch and swiped at the demon's underbelly, gutting the thing where it stood. The second demon's punch caught him across the jaw and threw him back, crashing him into the group he was protecting. "Ouch," Xander muttered, tightening his grip on the machete. "Toss me back in, guys." The 2 men who had caught him gave him a strange look, shook their heads, and did as he asked. As they watched the young man wade back into the fight, they both shrugged their shoulders, and one muttered to the other, "Ah, hell." Both men followed Xander into the melee, keeping well clear of the young man's machete, and tried to flank the 2 remaining monsters. Xander didn't bother to duck the next swing, instead opting to block it with the business end of the machete. The demon screamed as the blade cut deeply into his arm, and Xander winced in sympathy as he drew a wooden stake from his left hand and drove it into the general area of the demon's heart. He hoped. The demon let out another scream and fell to the ground, twitching. "Well, he didn't dust, but what the hell?" Xander muttered as he tried to extract the machete from the demon's arm, while the other 2 guys struggled to hold back the last monster. "Be right with you guys," Xander yelled as the blade finally jerked free. "Oh, please, take your time," one of them yelled back sarcastically as the demon landed a solid blow across his chest, cracking ribs in the process. Xander charged in again, bringing the machete down in a powerful stroke that actually cleaved through the distracted demon's skull. As the ugly creature fell to the ground, Xander screwed up his face in disgust as the slime that clung to the machete as he pulled it out. "Ew." Xander bent down and wiped the blade off on the ground. "That's really disgusting." The group of people have come a bit closer as the fighting died down, and were gaining enough nerve to ask questions. "What the hell was that thing?" Xander grimaced and straightened up. "Funny you should mention hell," he trailed off as the lights came on in some of their eyes. "No way. Demons? Please, those are myths." "They gotta be aliens." Xander rolled his eyes at that one. "Aliens. Yeah, right." "Nah, man, government conspiracy. That's the ticket." "Paranoid much?" "Christ, these people watch too much TV." Then his eyes widened in shock. Oh God, did I just think that? Crap, I have to find some better guy pals to hang out than Giles, Wolfman, and Dead Boy. Look, Xander yelled above the growing voices. We don't have time to argue. Let's haul ass and worry about naming the bastards in the morning, okay? That was a suggestion the group could get behind. They followed Xander out of the small grove and back to his car. Oh, goody. Now I get to see how we can fit 9 people into my car. If one of them makes a joke about clowns, I'm going to stake him. This has been Journeyverse Journeys, Part 5. Links below. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more.